So I have no problem anywhere because I think I have no taste at all and I can eat anything. Anyway, it is cooked, it's all right. I don't bother about what is cooked, what is not cooked. But if you have some French people for a dinner in a restaurant, they'll spend 45 minutes deciding what they are going to eat. I mean, what a waste of energy. 45 minutes just to decide what they are going to eat. After all, what is so great what you are going to eat? It's all there, just one thing everybody should have. So for Sahaj Yogis, it is important to give up this idea. I will have this. First of all, nobody should ask, what will you have? To me also. I do not like people asking me questions, what will you have? Because I have to think about it. I want to be nirvichara. So, this is one big ordeal which we do not understand how much we are attached to food. And food goes in the stomach. And not only that, it spoils our guru system but also spoils our physical system. So we should try not to look at food. That's why fasting was told to all the people who wanted to develop their Gurupad. So that they should not fast. But they do not fast normally because they think of food. So there's no fasting. I mean, fasting means that you go into nirvichara and don't think of food, but they are all the time thinking of food, so it has no meaning and you are just the same. Whether you eat it or not, your mind is eating it all the time. Then you start thinking, when will I end my fast and where will I go to have what? So this is a very basic thing that we should get rid of our habits, of our conditionings, what we are going to have, and what food we are going to have. Our children also should be given a proper training about it. That it's all right. Sometimes there is no salt, sometimes there is no sugar, doesn't matter. And sometimes there is nothing, doesn't matter. Nothing important for Sahaj Yogi. You can live without food for days together. No problem. So for a Sahaj Yogi, there is nothing like taste of food and hunger. There's only one hunger, is to be purified, to be clean. This is one of the things that dirties our mind, we should say, that we think about food all the time. Even in Russia, I found people carried all Indian things there. They were cooking all Indian things, and I am poor thing, I can't eat anything. So they brought everything for me thinking I'm an Indian, but they don't know I am Zen. I do not have sense of taste. So once to get over taste, one has to work out. It's an experiment we have to do with ourselves. Unless and until we introspect ourselves and do experiments, we cannot rise. Because though the Kundalini is trying her level best, but your conditionings are so great that it cannot pierce through and cannot make you onto that Guru level. If you see the lives of all these Gurus, they were married, they had children, they lived a normal life, but in their own personal life, they were absolutely detached people. So first detachment should come from food. And there, whatever you like, you just don't eat. That's the best way, because of liking something. Supposing if somebody is fond of ice cream, he must have already spoiled his liver. So they give up. If you like pasta, give up pasta. If you like something else, just give up. Don't ask for it and don't eat it at all. So that, you see, your mind will get a little bit detached from it. It's very easy to achieve this detachment, I think, if you work it out in a sensible way. Just try to punish your body. You see, if you are your Guru, you better take hold of first of all your body and your conditionings. You have to treat your body with this thing. I have told many girls who are married abroad are still making their Indian food and eating that. Horrible it is. They should starve. If they starve for say about 5-6 days or maybe 8 days, then they'll eat any food in any case. That's why the fasting is given. So one should adjust oneself to any kind of food you can have. And if you want to survive, then you eat anything. So just make it a point that you get rid of this very simple conditioning you have of liking the food that you want to eat and you don't want to eat. I think a Sahajogini or Sahajogi who cannot get rid of this little thing, then how can you call him a Sahajogi? I don't know, he's very asahaj. Because the other day I met one lady. I said, what is the matter? Where have you been? She said, I've been looking out for some sort of an Indian ingredient. I said, how can you get it here in this place? You cannot. Why? Because they asked me to make Indian food. All right. Then without that, can't you make Indian food? What is the need to run all the way, whole day for one small little thing called hing? There's a big name for that. It's a small little thing. Just to get that, she had to run all over the places to get it. So, for people who are Sahajogis, if they are such, whatever is available, you can make something nice out of it and eat it. So that shows what? Shows sagacity, shows trupti, shows your satisfaction. And that is one of the manifestations of a guru, that he is a satisfied soul. He is just self-contained, doesn't bother. Now, for example, some people, especially in the West, thank God they are not spoiled by their wives so much. They don't have so much of conditioning. They can eat anything. I've seen that when they come on the Indian tour, all the Indians say horrid food was given and the poor things were eating that horrid food and this and that. And I asked them, which place do you like the best? They said, Brahmapuri. I said, they were saying Brahmapuri had the worst food and everybody was complaining. No, Brahmapuri was the best because we could bathe in the river and we could sing and we could enjoy it. So that's the sign of one thing to get rid of your bad habits of food business. Now the second part is, for the body you need comforts. I must congratulate the Western Sahajogis that they may be coming from any walk of life. I must say, Indians have to learn from them. They may be coming from any position or status. All of them enjoy the comfort of the spirit when they travel in the tour. They do not ask for, I haven't got a chair, I haven't got a bed, I haven't got a proper thing. In this way, you see, you will realize that the body comfort is of no importance. We have just spoilt our body. There's no need. No need. Body, you put it anywhere, will sleep in any case. If you cannot sleep for 2 nights, all right, put on some music for 1 night or 2 nights as we had here. You will sleep anyway. So this is the second point, is that we have to give up body comfort. But the third point where I think the Western people falter is their materialistic attitude. Materialistic attitude and their fondness of their eyes. So one of them is the worst of all. The worst and worst of all is that you can never have that such a big blot. If you have that, is to have a roving eye and things like that. That's out of question. That's out of question for women or for men. They are not Sahajogis by any chance. They have to have very clean eyes. That part is all right. And the second part is the greed, lust and greed. Of course, with Sahaja maybe the lust part is over, but greed is still there with so many who get lost. So I would say Indians do not have this lust problem, but they still have greed problem. Means they want to buy something like a radio or some electrical stuff they must buy. If they come abroad, they must buy something. It's all right. If you get it, well and good. If they don't get it, well and good. It should be. But for a Westerner, you see, he would not like to give up his furniture, which his great-grandmother had it. Though he can't sit on it because it's so old. If he sits on it, it will break. But he must keep it to show off that I had a great-grandmother who gave this unique chair. According to Indian standards, it's junk, absolute junk. Because it is good for nothing, you put it in the drawing room, nobody can sit on it, and it looks junky. But according to the Western mind, the older it is, the better, whether it is a junk or anything. He'll have so many junks in the house, and then they will sell like hotcakes. Because there's a very subtle materialistic attitude towards matter. That this will sell like hotcakes if I sell it, because there must be another mad Westerner who would like to buy that junk. See? So this junk that you have in the house is better to get rid of, because God knows how many people must have used like it's like a grave in the house. It's a grave. So to have then also the antique jewelry. Antique jewelry is another matter. Antique is a what you can say is the fad or addiction of the Western people. Antique. For us, nothing is antique, because we still produce antique things, beautiful things. So Indians don't understand the value of antiques. They don't understand how these people are so mad after torn things and broken things and dirty things and filthy things. But the Western mind has been brought up that way. Now in these antique things I have seen that once I went to somebody's house and he asked me with very great honor to sit on his chair. And as soon as I sat on the chair, I thought there were snakes and there were scorpions all biting me. I got a fright, I said, what is it? He said, this is from great-great-great-grandmother. You see, she gave us this thing. I said, it will break, I better sit outside. So this also, madness of this antique is so much that it is unbelievable how people go into it. So there's a joke. In India, there's a very great writer called as Premchand. He wrote about two Englishmen going on the road of Banaras when they were hit by a lota that they used for their bathrooms, fell on their feet. And it fell on their feet, and he jokingly says, on the feet where all the bureaucrats fall. Means all Indian bureaucrats used to fall at the feet of the English at that time, so he made a joke. But doesn't matter. Then the English, you see, looked at the thing and they were very angry. And immediately they took to law. You have to come to the courts, you have to come to the police, and we're going to report this has fallen there, it has hit us and all that. So there was a clever man, he knew the English or the Western mind. He said, sir, do you know this lota has very valuable. He said, why? Because this one was used by Akbar the Great. So ancient it is. He said, really? Yes, it is. And you just don't quarrel with them and ask them for this lota. And he told in Indian language to them that I have befooled these people. I have told them that this lota belong to Akbar, and you have to take this lota and use this lota to just to befool them. So then they asked, but all right, we'll forgive you, we'll not take you to any courts or anything, but you just give us this lota. They said, no, we can't. We said, why? Because it's such an antique piece. You see, in India you won't find anybody respecting antique pieces, especially in Benares, nobody bothers. So they said, really, yes, it belonged to Akbar, and my forefathers worked with him, so he gave us this lota. We can't give you, we are sorry. They said, no, please give us, you see, we'll not take you to the police. All right, you charge us. Whatever money you charge us and all that. In those days, they paid 1,000 rupees, which is equal to now 1 crore, I think. They gave, these English paid them and bought that lota, which has nothing to do with Akbar or anyone. So this madness of antique has to go away from our minds. It's such a built-in thing within us that we always talk of antiquities. Perhaps maybe because of wars everything was destroyed, and whatever was in the olden times was something very beautiful and good, and now we are not making very good things. Perhaps maybe that is the reason. But now we are making nice things. We can make Now in England I was surprised that old crafts are coming up. Everywhere I go, the old crafts are coming up. So to respect antiques means you just stop making the old craft revive. Because you pay so much to the antiques, the same thing made today won't fetch the same price as it was. Now this has ruined our creativity, ruined our handwork, and it has ruined our whole, I think, the quality of our life, because the way we are mad after antiques. So this also should go from your head, that anything antique is something good. It's a very superficial value if you see to it, because people have think that antique is something expensive. It's just a marketing style that people have felt that this is expensive, that is expensive, so it's something great. To wear something stupid and to say that this is antique jewelry and go about. I mean, God knows how many people must have used it and must have worn it, and what must be the feelings of that person. So we have to understand that this conditioning that we have in our heads, that we must have something antiques with us, keep something of such value. I mean, these questions never arose before, so it's not written in any books. Any one of the books of the gurus is not written that don't care for antiques. They have written don't drink, don't smoke, all other things which spoils your nabi. They have written all these things, but they have not written that don't worry about antiques so much. You see, and I find that's a craze nowadays, and so we have to tell people that we have to be careful. Moreover, I feel the way people have gone to drugs, and that maybe that because they use so much antiques that the booths from the antiques must have got them. Can't understand that why people are so melancholy all the time crying.